I read a comment in one of the high OS lobbies recently that said somebody did 10 fusions in 20 minutes. Immediately, I thought to myself, there's no way. That's just impossible. It's not, like, even with the current meta and the way that we understand it. And then I said, okay, I'm going to stop. I'm going to try. I'm going to attempt to do the same thing. The footage that you're seeing right now, that's not me live talking to you. This is a recording. We're watching this together. This is an attempt for 10 AFUSs at 20 minutes. So a couple things just to start out. You'll see over here, we've got a couple of units to the right. This is to simulate our air partner. So we would normally have a partner, an air player at the back who would donate the metal for his T2 constructor. And the idea is that we will be giving him our T2 constructor about 5-6 minutes. So that's what those units are there for. Other than that, you'll see we've got the blueprint on the screen. I'm utilizing my absolute favorite layout here. This is amazing because we don't even have to move the commander. He basically just stands still for a whole bunch of time and then he goes and blows himself up. So it's a really nice layout here. But let's talk a little bit about why 10 AFUS at 20 minutes is just so ridiculous. So back in the good old days where you basically just only made AFUS, you remember the good old days of rushing an AFUS and you did like an 11-minute AFUS and that was amazing. Things have shifted. Okay, and even back then, you could do like maybe 6 AFUS if you just fully went greed. And the reason why things have changed is because of the butler tech. Somebody somewhere worked out that butlers are actually really good for scaling. However, there's a part of me that thinks they're great for at least initial scaling because they've got great build power on them, but they're not super duper good long term. Anyway, that's what this video is about, looking to see whether we can transition from a wind economy into a fusion economy, specifically an AFUS economy, and do it quickly. Now remember, when you're playing from the eco position, your mileage may vary. Your front may be falling, and you'll need to contest the potential stouts that are pushing down towards your geo, so you may need to send a sniper in. This is just an example, and we're going to talk about how you can actually effectively scale from the eco position, or in fact from any position, right? It doesn't have to be specific to the eco. A little bit of a weird bug out right there. I've never seen that, the bot getting bugged out on the bot. So here, in place of the energy converters, we're putting down our nanos, and in place of the aircraft plant, we'll put down our T2 lab. That's just all there, just so that we know exactly where things are going. Now, this T2 bot, or this T1 bot rather, will also be going over to the air player, but of course, we're just in a single player game here. We're minding our own business. We're just, we're in a controlled environment. Let's just put it that way. So another thing to note, and I got hate the last time I did this, so I'm just going to call it out right now. Single player wind is completely different from multiplayer wind. Your average wind in single player is significantly lower than what it is in multiplayer on this map. I don't know if it's on every map, but that's just the way it is. On top of that, the circumstances that you often see in multiplayer where there's like overflow of energy, obviously you don't get that here. So I will just caveat this entire video by saying this is assuming that you've got relatively good wind production that's happening, or good wind circumstances. Don't get me wrong, I've played multiplayer games where I've had absolutely terrible wind. It does happen, but it's a lot rarer in multiplayer games. And quite often you'll play entire 10-minute pieces where wind is consistently at the average or above. So we're going to blow our comm here at 320. We're going to suck up the metal and infuse it. We've already sucked up the our enemy constructor, and now we're going to give ourselves an Atlas. So this is a transport unit that will be typically provided by the air player. Make sure that you're asking your air player to give these over to you. And at this point, once the T2 con is coming out, it's 3:45. You'll see this is quite an early T2 lab here, but we've managed to get it up just because we are able to rely on our allies' infusion of metal. And the moment that our constructor is out, we're going to start moving him around. So he's going to drop down these blueprints, as you would have seen me do many a times from the tech position. And I always like to try and get that blueprint down. It can be a little bit finicky. I suspect after I've got like maybe 20 or 30 games in the eco position, it should be a little bit easier for me to do. But it's definitely something that you need to practice, the movement of the advanced constructor with the transport. The other thing that you will really need to practice is juggling your build power on these blueprints. We want to just focus on making sure all of our blueprints are staying alive, but we're just putting the minimal amount of BP into those, and we're looking to try and get these up as early as we possibly can. So we're going to put the old man up there. You can see it at the moment. It's only 4:30, so I'm having a bit of trouble there. I tell you what, I've accidentally misclicked on my keyboard with the wait command instead of the unload command, and that ruins you, man, when that happens. So we've got all 4 of our blueprints up. It's still before 5 minutes here. And this is quite a standard thing, right? Like I'm getting this timing in typically like 80 to 90% of my games that I'm playing from the eco spot. I say that playing have like 7 or 8 games now. So here we donated over, and that is the constructor now gone over to our ally. And meanwhile, back here, all we're doing is just focusing on this. So this opening right here is, in my opinion, just the standard opening for eco, and it probably will be for the foreseeable future as long as the map is like this. Primarily because if we think about it from the perspective of, like, why do we do the things that we do? We do it so we can kill the enemy. How do we do that? With units. And how do you pay for units? Metal. So it's all about metal. And the more metal you've got, the more you can invest in energy that allows you to invest in more metal. So basically, we just want to get our T2 mexes up as quickly as we possibly can. That's what we're doing here. So now we're going to start moving over our nanos over towards the center here. So you can see we're using our constructor to make sure that we're in the middle and looking to put them down. We've also got a butler in queue. These guys are going to be key here. In a previous video, I mentioned, like, I don't know what the key number is, but I do think this actually might be the optimal way to scale, just because when it comes to multiplayer games, obviously, like, so just to advise, the wind here is fixed. That means it doesn't change. It will always be the same amount. Whereas in your multiplayer games, there are risks to that wind. So you typically want to play it as safe. If you've got 2,000 wind turbines, well, you probably couldn't because you're at the unit cap. Let's say 1,000 wind turbines. You're going to be a lot less, or a lot more impacted by a wind stall than if you've got 200 wind turbines and a whole bunch of fusion. So if you can achieve the same result at the same time with fusion over winds, then you probably should take that option. So at 640, we managed to complete the last AMEX, which is pretty damn good. Now, I will also note that at this point, normally you'd be looking to get out your advanced constructors, hand them off to your allies. We're not doing that here. We're just, you know, we're doing the full greed. If they pay you, or I shouldn't say that, always do that in your games. There's no rules or no exceptions about it. Let me just turn down this volume a little bit. The music's starting to get a bit crazy. So here what we're going to do is we're looking to scale our wind, and we're just going to use our constructors for it, our nano. And by placing our just one nano back at base, it allows us to go between the lab and to go between the butler. And the whole idea here is that we never want to spend we don't ever want to go into negative metal in the sense that we're spending more than we're making and we're sitting at 0. We want to avoid that. We want to try and make sure we've always got like at least 50 as an example in the bank. And the reason why is because we need our projects to be intentional. We need to make sure that we don't just have 100 butlers all building wind turbines and they're all stalling. What's the point in having those 100 butlers if half of them are stalling? You could have done the same thing with half as many butlers, and you could have done it a lot faster because those butlers are a cost. So the whole idea here is that it's a very careful balancing act between energy, metal, and build power. And the only real way to learn this is through experience and to be aware of it. So I would just advise, keep practicing, keep doing your best. Now, our goal here is to get up to about 400 wind turbines, and then we're going to be switching all of our butlers over to energy converters. And one of the things I've been doing recently is I've just been moving out a construction turret and a single butler over, and then just kind of, you know, have at it, brother, and let them do it, because the construction turret is a lot more efficient than the butler, as long as you're building within the radius of it. So here you can see, even right now, we're overflowing, but only by like 100 energy. So what we're going to do is we're just going to drop down in an emergency, just some energy storage, or it's not energy storage, rather, energy converters, just because we're overflowing, and it might not seem like much, but at the end of the day, if you're overflowing 100 energy, then that's metal every second that you could be potentially having. So we want to make sure that we're, especially after we've got our T2 AMAXs up, that we're looking to try and keep that balance going. So even right now, we've got 200 metal in the bank. This is a good amount of metal to have. We can use this metal very quickly if we wanted to, and that's essentially it. So we're moving up to pretty close to the 10-minute mark. It's important to note that anti would be coming through around this time. We're not going to be putting down our anti-nuke here. Instead, we're just scaling because, well, that's the goal, right? We want to hit 10 AFUS in 20 minutes. Now, apparently in the game that actually happened where one of the guys did 10 AFUS in 20 minutes, he was fed quite a bit of metal from his ally. But I said, you know what, let's see if it's actually possible to do it by yourself in a game. So our metal started to stack up right here. And if your metal has started to stack up, normally what that means is you don't have enough build power. So one of the best ways for you to get build power is just to guard your lab, because the more units you've got guarding your lab, so we can see we're kind of like letting them build up right here. The more you let them guard, or the more units you've got guarding the lab, the faster they're going to be spending that metal. Instead of putting down like a solar collector or something, we're going to do it that way, and then that allows us to scale. So what we're now doing is looking to reclaim our lab. It's the 10-minute mark, and I've decided, all right, that's going to be our go-to. So we're going to aim now to get a metal storage down so that we can reclaim the lab. That's really important because this is 2,900 metal that we could be using on something else. So the longer that this sits here, it's sitting essentially idle. I mean, it's providing us build power, but we can get build power in other ways. We can get that build power from our T1 constructor by building construction turrets, and that's exactly what our game plan is. So we're going to utilize this emergency build power that we've had through the form of butlers, reclaim, and then we're going to look to put down fusions. Now, the general rule that I've seen is 100 metal a second if you're playing as Armada to put down your AFUSs, and 150 if you're core. I actually think so. Basically, you shouldn't build fusions after there if you're scaling eco. Essentially, is the rule. But I actually think fusions might be quite reasonable even beyond that. It all to me comes down to build power and how fast you can drop. Get something up. So the build power required for an AFUS compared to a fusion is significantly greater. Not only because the cost is higher, but also because the build power or the build point number is much higher. What that means is your units, so our butlers here, they are spending twice the amount of metal that they would building an AFUS. So we're getting twice the value from those butlers at the moment. So by building this fusion, it allows us to get the energy online sooner. The sooner the energy is online, then the sooner our metal is online. So that we go from 82 metal, 85 metal to 92, 93. So we've gone up about 11 metal just by having that online. And it's quite a bit more once we've actually got converters. You can see that we're starting to overflow, and naturally we need to respond to that overflow. So sending out a butler, and we'll make sure to send out a unit with him. And here we can see that we've idled out our metal. We don't have any metal. So what we want to do is we want to look for things that we can suck up, and that even includes build power. So our butlers are less efficient than our constructor turrets, so we're going to reclaim them. They were great at the time because we needed them. We didn't have the constructor nearby. You can see we've floated 27k energy, and if you were to do the math on that, probably works out to be quite a bit of metal, maybe a couple hundred metal quite easily. So maybe about, what, 400 metal, something like that. So we have missed out on quite a bit just by not having the appropriate converters. And so now we're slowly going to move this base of operations into construction turrets rather than butlers. So here we're looking to try and take as little space as we can, or at least less intrusive space towards this. So at this stage, this is where things start to get a little bit, I would say, subjective. It would depend on how you like to play it. But what I see right here is two fusions that have served a purpose, okay? They've provided 2,000 energy, and that energy has subsequently been converted into metal. They've done that. They've done that well. We're at 121 metal per second right now. But what they do right now is they exist purely as metal that we want to turn into an AFUS. Now, before we didn't have the build power to justify going into that AFUS. It was going to take us way too long to get it online. That metal is just going to be sitting out on the sidelines for all that time. Now we've scaled our build power. What it means is we can build that AFUS, but not only can we build that AFUS, it also means that we can reclaim those fusions. The energy rate, or the rate of conversion, or I should just say that the rate of metal that you pay for the energy that you get is significantly greater with an AFUS versus with a normal fusion. It's just that it is a nice little stepping stone to be able to drop into. So we've got a whole bunch of construction turrets, and you'll be able to see that at the top of the screen, we've got the metal that's coming in, the 122, 124, and the metal that's going out, 144. And as long as that's draining at a rate where you're going to be able to stay afloat, keep in mind we always want to try and stay afloat, make sure our projects are always being constructed by our build power. We never want idle build power. Then that is going to allow us to do that. So here what we're doing is we're actually reclaiming that fusion ever so slowly with our excess build power. So we may have built a little bit too much build power here, but it's not a problem because we will still be achieving something with it. So arguably, you probably could have gone for like 2 less constructors and then built the AFUS slightly faster, which got you a bit more metal. But this is another way that we're looking to take advantage of that. And here you can see now we've reclaimed that fusion. We're now going to infuse all that metal straight into the AFUS and look to try and complete it as quickly as we can. A little bit of a misplace here on that the metal storage. but we're looking to complete our AFUS here about the 1440 mark, somewhere around that time frame. You can see we've still got a lot of metal in the bank, which is absolutely okay because we've just reclaimed our initial fusion. As I said, I think when it comes to like timings on these stuff, I'm still working stuff out exactly to how you'd want to scale this. Keep in mind that when you take this into your real game, that like every AFUS that you make is a point where you can lift your head up and say, hey, does my team need my help? No? Okay, I'm going to make another AFUS then. That's essentially it. Another thing to note is we're doing a row of 3 fusions here. And I think this is actually quite important because typically I've been doing rows of 4 fusions. And the reason why I find this a bit more interesting is purely because it allows your nanos from both sides to hit all 3 rows of your fusions. Whereas if you go for 4 rows, you can't do that. So what I'm going to be suggesting is probably we want to stick to like this kind of 3 row and then expand out the 4th row a little bit later after you've at least gone up to your like 10 AFUS, which is kind of like the core. I shouldn't say that. 10 AFUS is not the core. Don't just be making 10 AFUS and start making units. That's not how it works, guys. This is purely just to show you how to scale, how to think about scaling. Once again, pointing your eyes up towards the top of the screen, we've reclaimed a fusion. We've got quite a bit of metal that's in the bank, so we want to make sure that we're spending that metal. So every time a fusion is completed, we want to build a whole bunch of nanos, because that fusion comes online, it now brings online a whole bunch of energy converters, and that metal that you're receiving is going to be significantly greater. Each AFUS is representative of about 42 metal at this rate. Another thing to note, we're not building advanced energy converters. This is really important. Not only do advanced energy converters take a lot of BP, which means all that build power that you should be putting into an AFUS are instead being put into that advanced energy converter, but you're also putting all that metal in there, whereas the energy converters that we've got at the moment only take one metal. Whereas the advanced energy converters is like 380. It's a huge difference. Eventually, over time, the advanced energy converter does pay itself off. It does have a better return. However, the argument that you can scale much faster with these in the interim is definitely one to consider an offset, and I'm not smart enough to do the maths on it, but I suspect it's probably going to work out better than if you're doing advanced energy converters. So here we are, a little bit before the 17-minute mark with 4 fusions up. This is ridiculous. I've never seen this many fusions this early. It is kind of crazy, especially considering we got a pretty substantial wind economy behind this as well. We're sitting at about 400 winds at the moment. Our 5th AFUS is coming up, and we're just following that general rule that every time a new AFUS is built, we're just going to build some more construction turrets, and we're going to keep an eye on that metal at the top of the screen, and we just want to try and keep that as close as we possibly can. So you can see at the moment, it's probably a little bit too many construction turrets. So what are we going to do? We're going to reclaim them because it's probably too low. Ideally, I'd like to see that number at about 100, just so I know that I'm not spending too much metal versus retaining too much metal. So here, once again, we're going to continue putting down all of our energy converters, and you can see we're slowly draining our metal away, and we've now got our next fusion that has now come online. So we're a little bit before the 18-minute mark here. 5 AFUS, not a bad time so far. And we are really trying to gun for that 20 minutes. That's what we want. 20 minutes, 10 AFUS. I genuinely think it's impossible to do. Maybe I thought it was impossible to do. We'll have to wait and see whether or not we get there. 18 minutes. It's a bit of a rush at the moment, but the key here is just balancing our build power with our metal. That's it. You can see 4 seconds, 3 seconds, 2 seconds. We're sitting on less than 100 metal. And now we're going to have to throw down more construction turrets because that new AFUS has come online, and subsequently we've now got more metal coming in, so we need to be able to support that. I don't know how much each nano uses when it's building the AFUS, but it's better just to play or to eyeball it and see how you go. Keep in mind, we're doing this on like a single construction builder and a single advanced construction unit. So this is part of the reason why I really just like the Butler so much. Not having to do advanced energy converters really just makes it so much more simple. You can just keep everything centralized. You can see we're sitting on about 600 metal at the moment, so a little bit higher than what we'd like it to be, especially considering the amount of metal we're making per second. If you were to like go AFK for even like 5 seconds, you're pretty close to overflowing. So yeah, you got to be really careful with it. And you just have to be very proactive in adding nanos and know that after each AFUS is complete, that more nanos need to come down. Normally with the exception of like the first 1 or 2, just because you're going to be infusing them with the fusion. That's essentially it. So here, 19 minutes and 17 seconds, 18, 19, 20. We got 2 more to go. and it is an absolute race to the finish line. Are we going to get there? That's the big question. So at the moment, have a look at the energy that we've got. We've got 30k energy coming in at 19 minutes. And a lot of this is going to be coming from those fusions. You can see we've got 10 seconds to go on this last, well, it's not the last AFUS, this second last AFUS. So it really just comes down to like making sure we've got all the metal to continue building it. We don't want to stall out that metal. And now that last AFUS finally coming down, 1952. How long is it going to take us? Unfortunately, it's a little bit too long. You can see that we're actually stalling out on the metal. So we're at 20 minutes and we did 9.5 AFUS. So indeed, it's impossible at the moment, but I think there's a lot of improvements we can make. But as you can see, this is a great way to scale from the eco position. Now, granted, we haven't done a lot of the right things. We didn't give our constructors to our allies. We didn't build anti-nuke. But in the end, just to take a look, we've got 293 wins. We've got how many? We've got 413 energy converters on a total of 20 butlers. And in the end, so if we take a look here, we've got 36k energy and 449 metal per second. Now, like obviously this is very specific to this environment here, but the lessons I'm trying to teach you here are more so about how to effectively scale and balance out these three resources, making sure that your energy is always being offset by your converters, making sure your metal is always being offset by your build power, and making sure that your build power has always got enough metal in the bank to actually be useful. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video. I'm confident we'll be able to get it. I'm not going to try any more attempts than this. It remains impossible for the moment, but I tell you what, it is I'm impressed. I'm thoroughly impressed with how effectively this scaled.